Five young men from Philadelphia walked into a recording studio in 1970 with $400 and a song. That $400 bought them a few hours of studio time, a single track, and a shot at something neither of them could have fully imagined. What it eventually bought them was 12 consecutive top 10 hits, 5 gold singles, 3 gold albums, a sound that defined an entire era, and a place in the hearts of anyone who has ever needed a love song to say what words alone could not. But that is not where this story ends. This story is about where 5 men went after the music faded, about who survived, who walked away, and who is still standing in 2026 carrying a 50-year legacy on their shoulders. This is the story of the Stylistics. It began not in a studio or on a stage, but in a high school hallway in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 2 rival vocal groups, the Monarchs and the Percussions, had been competing against each other in local talent shows, each convinced their sound was superior. When both groups lost members to military drafts and personal circumstances in the late 1960s, there were not enough singers left in either group to continue independently. Their English teacher, Beverly Hamilton, saw what was happening and had a simple but inspired idea. She suggested the 2 groups merge. What came out of that merger was a quintet that nobody outside of Philadelphia had heard of yet. Russell Tompkins Jr., James Smith, and Arian Love came from the Monarchs. James Dunn and Herb Morrell came from the Percussions. The name The Stylistics came from their guitar player Robert Douglas, who believed the word captured something elegant about what these 5 voices could do together. In 1970, they recorded their first song, You're a Big Girl Now, at Virtue Studios in Philadelphia, spending exactly $400 on the session. The song became #1 in Philadelphia and spread across the tri-state area within weeks. AVC Records came knocking, and then, through AVC, came the man who would change everything, producer Tom Bell. Bell was already one of the most gifted musical minds in Philadelphia. He had transformed the Delphonics into one of the most beautiful acts in soul music. He was skeptical when he first heard the Stylistics audition, but then Russell Tompkins Jr. opened his mouth and held a note in that soaring, crystalline falsetto, a voice that lived somewhere above normal human range and somehow felt more intimate for it, and Bell understood what he had in front of him. He focused the group's entire sound around Russell's voice. Lush string arrangements, sweeping orchestral production, bittersweet lyrics written by his collaborator Linda Creed, a young woman from Philadelphia who understood heartbreak and longing in a way that translated directly into melody. The combination was devastating in the most beautiful possible sense. Stop, Look, Listen hit the charts in 1971. You Are Everything followed. Then Betcha by Golly Wow, I'm Stone in Love with You, Break Up to Make Up, People Make the World Go Round, 12 consecutive top 10 R&B hits between 1971 and 1974, 5 gold singles, 3 gold albums. They appeared on Soul Train, on The Mike Douglas Show, on Top of the Pops in England, 10 times on that program alone. Audiences on both sides of the Atlantic embraced them with an intensity that only the truly great love songs ever generate. You Make Me Feel Brand New, featuring a shared lead between Russell and Arian Love, became their biggest pop hit, holding at #2 on the Billboard chart for 2 weeks in the spring of 1974. For 3 extraordinary years, the Stylistics were one of the most consistently brilliant acts in the world. And then, in 1974, Tom Bell stopped working with them. The reasons were professional. Bell was expanding his production work, and the 2 parties could not reach terms for continued collaboration. But the impact on the group was immediate and severe. Without Bell's arrangements and Linda Creed's writing shaping the material around Russell's voice, the magic formula dissolved. New producers came in, Van McCoy, Hugo, and Luigi, and while some of the work was competent, none of it touched what had come before. Commercially, the group began a slow decline in the United States that would last the rest of the decade. What saved them was Britain. In 1975, Can't Give You Anything But My Love reached #1 on the UK charts. The lighter, more pop-oriented sound that audiences in America had cooled on was embraced enthusiastically in Europe. The Stylistics became a major concert draw across Britain, Ireland, and continental Europe for years, filling venues and selling records while their American profile continued to fade. They became one of the great paradoxes of soul music, heroes abroad while slowly becoming forgotten at home. By the end of the 1970s, the lineup that had created all those hit records was beginning to fracture. James Dunn was the first to go. He had been born in Philadelphia on February 4, 1950, and had been part of the Percussions before the merger that created the Stylistics. His departure came around 1980, driven by health problems that made continued performing impossible. He stepped away from the stage quietly and moved into retirement. As of 2026, James Dunn is alive in his mid-70s and has remained retired from performing for over 4 decades. James Smith followed shortly after. Born in New York City on June 16, 1950, Smith had moved to Philadelphia after the death of his father in 1962 and became one of the founding voices of the group. He left following internal conflicts over the direction the group was taking in the early 1980s. Like Dunn, he chose retirement over the road. As of 2026, James Smith is also alive and retired, his voice part of a catalog of recordings that still circulates on radio stations and streaming services around the world, even if he himself is no longer behind a microphone. 2 men gone from the stage, 3 remaining. Russell Tompkins Jr. stayed the longest of the original 5. He was born on March 21, 1951 in Philadelphia, introduced to music by his father, shaped by high school talent shows, and blessed with a falsetto that Rolling Stone magazine ranked among the 200 greatest singing voices in history in 2023. He carried the group through the commercial dry years of the late 1970s and 1980s, through the nostalgia circuit years of the 1990s, through lineup changes and label changes, and the relentless physical toll of singing in falsetto night after night for 3 decades. By the time he approached 50, the voice that had been his greatest gift had become his most pressing vulnerability. Years of overuse without sufficient rest had damaged his vocal cords in ways that required serious recovery time. In April 2000, Russell Tompkins Jr. left the Stylistics. He later told interviewers that he regretted not having left much earlier. He did not disappear. After a period of rest and formal music study, during which he taught himself to play piano, he released a solo album in 2002 called A Matter of Style. In 2004, he formed Russell Tompkins Jr. and the New Stylistics, a group dedicated to performing the classic material as faithfully as possible to the original recordings. He partnered with William Hart of the Delphonics and Ted Mills of Blue Magic for a joint album under the name The Three Tenors of Soul in 2007. As of 2026, Russell Tompkins Jr. is 74 years old and still performing with the New Stylistics, still hitting notes that defy reasonable expectation from a man of any age, still singing the songs he made famous over half a century ago. Which brings us to the final 2. The ones who never left. Arion Love was born on August 8, 1949 in Philadelphia. He came from the Monarchs. He shared the lead on You Make Me Feel Brand New, arguably the greatest song the Stylistics ever recorded, and his voice provided the warmth and second tenor richness that balanced Russell's falsetto in the group's harmonic blend. He has been with the Stylistics in one form or another since 1968. Through every lineup change, every label change, every commercial peak and valley, Arion Love has remained.
Herb Merle was born on April 27, 1949 in Lane, South Carolina, and later moved to Philadelphia, where his musical journey truly began to take shape. In the city's rich and competitive soul scene, he became part of a local group known as the Percussions, a crucial step toward what would eventually evolve into the Stylistics. It was also during these early years that he formed a lifelong friendship with Arion Love. The two met in junior high school, and what started as a simple connection between classmates grew into a brotherhood that has now lasted for more than 60 years, surviving the pressures of fame, time, and life itself. Herb's baritone voice became one of the most essential elements of the group's unmistakable sound. While audiences were often captivated by the soaring falsetto leads, it was Herb's steady, grounded tone that held everything together beneath the surface. His voice provided warmth, structure, and emotional balance, the kind of presence that doesn't always demand attention, but is impossible to replace. Through every era of the group's evolution, from their early success in the 1970s to the challenges and changes that followed, Herb remained a constant. He never left, never drifted, and never let go of the music that defined his life. As of 2026, Herb Merle and Ariane Love are both 76 years old and still performing together as the Stylistics, now joined by newer member Jason Sharp. What they bring to the stage today goes far beyond nostalgia. It is a living continuation of a legacy. Their performances carry decades of history, experience, and authenticity that cannot be recreated. On April 28, 2025, they were inducted into the Atlantic City Walk of Fame alongside Russell Tompkins Jr., James Smith, and James Dunn. For the first time in decades, all 5 original members were honored together, a powerful and emotional recognition of everything they built. So this is where they stand in 2026. James Dunn and James Smith are alive and retired, their voices preserved in recordings that continue to reach new generations of listeners. Russell Tompkins Jr. is still performing, still reaching for those extraordinary high notes that once defined an era, and Herb Merle and Ariane Love remain side by side, still stepping onto stages, still singing with the same passion that began it all. 5 voices, 1 city, a sound that refused to fade, carried forward by time, memory, and the enduring power of music.